The following program is rated TVMA. This program may contain strong opinions, explicit language, and possible adult themes. The opinions expressed are not necessarily those of the Smoke Free Radio Network or its affiliates. This program is meant for mature adult audience. Viewer and listener discretion is advised.
Hey folks, P. Basardo here, and you're listening to the Smoke Free Radio Network.
Good evening, good day, whatever it is when people are checking this out or checking it out on the Smoke Free Radio Network. Mike Peterson coming back at you again. Another edition of Rewind. And this is a show that's dedicated to when I can't catch people directly online or they can't be available at a very given specific time. So I catch up with people as I can. And this evening I've got something that's going to be kind of cool for you to check out. And I'm going to run through just a few things of what this guy does, because I think that you're going to be floored when you find out who tonight's guest is. Before I mention his name, let's check out some of the things that this guy has actually done. He is a journalist and a writer, a contributing writer for the following places: The Vaping Post, which is, by all things, located in Geneva, Switzerland; the Aspen Valley Vapes, Vapor Round, and Vape News, which used to be Vape Magazine. And he writes for all these people. He's also, believe it or not, a former professor of sociology at Owens College. Above and beyond all of that, right now, he's currently delivering his documentary series, Who Are The Vapers, which can be found on YouTube. And we'll talk about that with him this evening. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking to none other, believe it or not, than one Mr. Tony Ottomanelli. And as soon as I can switch this screen over, we're going to have him right here. There he is. How you doing this evening, Tony?
Good. How's it going, Mike?
Oh, I'll tell you what. It is finally fantastic to be able to catch up with you.
Yeah.
We've been thinking and planning about this for I don't know how long.
Yeah, I know. Probably at least a few months.
It's been a while. So it's kind of like this holy mackerel, we finally get to make it happen thing. And
yeah,
that's
exactly.
nice.
But I appreciate you having me on.
Oh,
Thanks
hey,
a lot.
dude, this is just cool. 100%, 100% cool. I don't even know where to start. There is so many things that we're going to be talking about. I want to talk about your documentary series in a little bit, because I really want people to focus on what this is going to be about.
Mm-hmm.
Current news and issues. Now, you've written for some of the leading, and I would honestly say prestigious, magazines, articles, features, things like that. And it is not just contained in the United States. You write globally, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Vapor Round magazine is located in the UK. I've been writing for them since issue 2, I think.
Wow.
So that was in 2015. And then also Vape News magazine, which, I think I've probably been published in every issue of their magazine as well. It's in Switzerland, and that's run by Guilan Armand, who's an awesome advocate for the industry. He made a documentary called Beyond the Cloud, which is, above all, I think, the best vaping documentary out there. And people should really check out Beyond the Cloud before they ever check out anything of mine. But yeah, I used to teach sociology in at Owens College, and I I saw that there was a lot of issues in the vaping community happening that were extremely sociological,
How
like
so?
to the point where it was just like vaping almost has become a phenomenon in the sense that I can't believe there's not more sociologists studying it. It's
Really?
kind of a it's kind of sad, really, because I mean, well, sociology is essentially the scientific and systematic study of social issues and social behavior. So, I mean, that's exactly what we're dealing with when we're talking about vaping. So, and the issues that have been going on politically and with the regulations and everything, state whether it's state regulations, whether it's uh, the federal regulations. I mean, it's gotten so strange that like it doesn't even seem real. Like the fact that I mean, all the stuff that they're doing now. I mean, these flavor bans and stuff. It's just like, yeah, this makes absolutely no sense. But when you look at what we're really dealing with in our, our social climate and the way our economy is structured, it makes complete sense. So if you look at it with a sociological imagination, which is basically like I like to describe it as a sociological imagination is a theory by C. Wright Mills, and it's basically like this is the easiest way to explain it. Imagine you're floating down on the earth, and you're getting closer and closer to your society,
Mm-hmm.
and you're your society and everything that's going on around it and inside it, and that way you can view the social events that are occurring as an outsider might. So you're viewing your culture from an exterior point of view. And when you start examining the vaping culture, it's pretty amazing. I mean, what the vaping community has become is a great thing. I think. I mean, it's been amazing to get to know so many people that I probably would have never met otherwise. And it's very sad to see the general public and the government reactions to what's going on, and the science. I mean, even the science community and stuff. I mean, there's just so much corruption. I mean, this is all about money. Everybody knows it.
It is. There's a lot of people. They either don't know or they haven't taken the time to either educate themselves or to look or. But when you and I talk, if we say the three letters MSA, it has such a profound and yet negative implication all in one shot. You know.
The FAA was just a business partnership. That's all it was. I mean, the fact that like the Democrats still, and I don't want to be too political about right side, left side stuff because I don't even know who to believe anymore. My God. But anyways, the Democrats though do tout this the MSA as being, a victory for them, and maybe it was a victory for them, but it wasn't a victory in the way they describe it, in the sense that they try to say that oh, we took on big tobacco and got them to finally comply with what we were asking. But if you watch footage from back then after they made that deal, I mean, big tobacco has got ear to ear smiles because they're just like, we just got the best business partner you could find, the U.S. government. I mean, they are the best business partner you could possibly ever find.
From
Honestly,
from
I mean,
things
they
that
make the rules, so
it's
like,
true. The
so. Go ahead.
the things that I have heard that are contained in the MSA, and it's my fault because I haven't taken the time to educate myself about it, but that they can't slander big tobacco, because it's written into the MSA that they can't do that. So
Right.
when people say there's this teen epidemic that is happening, and the only company that they mention is Juul, they're only mentioning Juul because it's the only one they can legally slander or get into the news and talk shit about. Really.
Well, right, exactly. And the thing about Juul that I don't know if a lot of people know this, maybe a lot of people do, but Juul is the fastest growing startup business ever in the United States. That is
Even above Apple and Microsoft?
Fastest growing above Facebook.
No shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Juul is so like when you're talking about Juul, I almost feel like it's a whole nother thing. People like to say juuling
Yeah.
or whatever. I almost agree with that because it's almost like separate from vaping because it really has nothing to do with the independent vaping community if you think about it. I mean, a lot of closed pod systems don't, but at the same time, I've got a lot of mixed feelings about this because I do believe that the vaping is meant for smokers. Because as a former smoker and tobacco abuser, because I used to dip and smoke, and I don't do any of that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
All because of vaping, all because of flavors, and just to see that basically people are trying to destroy this. It's become very concerning, and at the same time. I want to say, I feel like the vaping community right now is very divided, obviously. Like it's kind of, I mean, whether it's advocacy against big e-liquid manufacturers or whatever, regardless, I feel like in the vaping community, there's people who want to celebrate the culture that's been born throughout vaping, which is great. And I want to celebrate that as well. Which I'm, kind of trying to do with my documentary series, Who Are The Vapers, is to try to celebrate a little bit of the vaping culture and what's been kind of evolved over time in this industry and the community that's been built. But it's also a technology that's, used for to be able to quit smoking. And so that's why we have to remind people that this is about saving people's lives, and it's for smokers as well. Go ahead.
That's where a lot of people don't. They stop when they hear Fox News or whatever talking garbage, and they don't remember why vaping actually became important to begin with. This is about saving lives. This is a life-saving technology that is out there primarily for the sheer fact to get people to stop smoking combustible tobacco.
Yeah, absolutely, and it works. I mean, it absolutely works, and that's the problem is whenever there's something new that comes along, and it's effective, it's going to disrupt things economically. I mean, on a massive scale, vaping has disrupted the global economic system. And so, I mean, people got to understand the way capitalism works. It's not technically really a free market. It's really more or less there's pillars of major industries, whether you've got big pharma, big tobacco, big oil, which all work together. Okay. When you think about, the oil industry is responsible for making a lot of the world's plastic. So then you got big agribusiness, you got big real estate. I mean, these are pillars that prop up the economy. Okay. And the vaping industry has been kind of, whether we realize it or not, has been, taking a little bit of money out of the pockets of all these industries. And that, causes those pillars to wobble a little bit. And I mean, so I can see why there's a major concern for these other industries to possibly interfere and, get public health organizations to, basically root against vaping and talk about how it's an epidemic, which is just absurd. I mean, there's no epidemic. There's a miracle, but not an epidemic. I mean, I wish vaping. I hate that there's teens vaping and stuff like that. But when I think back when I was a teen, I wish there was vaping around. I mean, my God, like smoking is disgusting. I can't believe I did it for so long.
And that's one of the biggest things is they don't take the time to really look at it and say, oh, there was this, and I'm trying to grab it real quick. There was this piece that was done, an infographic, if I can put it that way, by Danielle Jones that talks about the teen epidemic, if it is such a thing. I'm going to see if I can slap it in here real quick, because I'm curious to see from your aspect, what does it look like? And she went through and grabbed, I want to say, almost all of the things that teens are doing or not doing, or things that they might be involved in, or things that are...
It's funny, you can't really gather data on teens anyways. I mean, it's not a realistic thing. I mean, any social scientist will tell you survey research is the most unreliable and invalid form of research there is. I mean, plain and simple. So, I mean, you're asking teens questions to fill out some type of like worksheet.
Yeah.
First of all, they're not going to take it seriously. Second of all, I mean, some of them will, some of them won't. But I mean, we got to stop acting like, they're...
Yeah.
That, this data is going to determine what's really going on. It's just unrealistic.
This is the graphic, and you should be able to see it on your screen. This is the graphic that came up. And for people that are going to be listening through the Smoke Free Radio Network on a podcast, what this is showing is a breakdown from the most offensive thing that teens are doing to what we are saying is the epidemic. And it starts out, it says teens texting and emailing while driving is at 39%, that 29% are using alcohol, that 19% are using marijuana, that 19% have been bullied at school, 14% are abusing prescription medications, 7.5%, almost 7.5% have attempted suicide. And last on this graphic is kids that vape, teenagers that vape regularly at 3.3%. And this out of all of it is what the FDA is trying to say is a fucking epidemic. When this graphic shows people, and I mean, it shows them hands down, there is no way in hell that can be classified as an epidemic.
Exactly. There's no way in hell. That was a great infographic, whoever did that, because that really puts things in perspective. I mean, even though, I said that, the research is invalid and unreliable, it's still, it's the best sometimes we can do in regards to getting information about these sort of things. But what I would, think is way more concerning is that amongst teenagers, the suicide rate for boys has gone up 30%.
Oh my God.
Amongst young girls, the suicide rate has gone up 70%. 70%.
Are you joking?
I'm not. That's very new research that's come out, done by some social psychologists, I think from Harvard or something. I gotta remember.
Why is that shit not on Fox News, CNN, ABC, NBC?
I don't know. It should be a major topic to be discussing.
That's a mind-blowing number.
There's no vaping epidemic. I mean,
that's a mind-numbing number.
Yeah, the suicide rates are mind-blowing and sad, and the thing is that that's real. That's
horrible.
Really,
that's just fucking horrible.
Yeah, I know it is. I mean, it's heartbreaking. And then you look at, like, here comes out. It's just hilarious how vaping can be like. This is how much of a joke things are nowadays. I mean, there's so much information out there. It's so. I mean, people say this is the information age, but really it's the misinformation age, because there's something in sociology they call a narcotizing dysfunction, where it's a theory that, like, if you're bombarded with too much information, you'll stop caring about really all these issues you keep hearing about. And I think that's part of what's going on. I mean, there's times when I'm trying to do research, I'm just like, oh my God, like there's just so much information out there. It's hard to know, what's factual and what's, I mean, everything's going to be a little bit embellished here and there, but it's hard to know what's real. And that's the problem. Those numbers that you showed in that infographic are pretty spot on.
In your And I will put it in this fashion. In your professional opinion, as a professor, do you find that there is an actual tipping point for this current trend that we are going to say and will say is like the teen epidemic? Do you find that people become numb to it and they just don't give a shit anymore?
Yeah, I think people do become numb to it. I mean, there's just, I feel like that's why they call it a narcotizing dysfunction, because it's like a narcotic. I mean, information is like the most valuable currency there is, technically. I mean, it's considered social capital. And that's another blanket sociological term that, people use. But, this form of social capital, it can be used as a weapon. I mean, just like any type of currency. And if you can use information as a weapon, I mean, you say that and people would be like, oh, that sounds like a conspiracy or something like that. But it's not at all a conspiracy. It's very much logical, and it makes sense when you step back and take a look at things. And that's the problem with our community, in the vaping community, is we're so reactive. We got to stop being so emotional and reactive all the time. The first bit of information that comes out, boom, people are just jumping on it, and just, whether it's true or untrue, or I don't know, it doesn't matter. I mean, people just react too much. We've got to be more proactive than we are reactive.
Now, when they hit that tipping,
know what to do too.
When they hit that tipping point, would it be fair to say that a group of people that have become desensitized and they don't care anymore, would it be fair to say that they turn around and would go, you know what, I don't care how you fix this problem, fix it so I don't have to deal with it anymore?
Yeah.
Does that actually happen?
Give me a little bit more context to that, or because
a very good point. My father-in-law, thank God he is open-minded.
Okay.
But Mel comes over and he will ask me questions of what is happening. What is this about? And he was over just the other night. First thing out of his mouth, well, on Squawk Box and CNN, I heard this. And he regurgitated what he heard. He goes, how much of it is true? 3 minutes of me trying to actually tell him the truth, and his eyes glaze over. And it's not because he's not paying attention. It's just, right. It's like, okay, I've heard what I need to hear. Make this go away.
Well, I think it's because the media, I mean, first of all, when you're watching TV or whatever, it's so visually stimulating and effortless. So when you have the media, and you feel like they're talking to you, but you're not really present with that person. Yeah. So that's how powerful the media can be. I mean, whether it's social media, whether it's on television or, any type of screen. But at the same time, you're not in the room with that person. So it's very persuasive, and that's how powerful media is. People they're entertained, they're visually stimulated by what they're hearing on CNN. But then you talk to someone in person about it, you will see their eyes glaze over, and they're not as persuaded.
Yep.
I mean, they're just like, okay, whatever. I mean, I talk about vaping constantly, especially around my family and friends. Nobody wants to hear about it.
Yep.
They don't care. And I mean, they're glad that I don't smoke anymore and stuff like that. But, I can see why they're kind of like, okay, just shut up.
Yeah,
like,
you're talking about the same thing all over again. Let's talk about NASCAR or whatever else.
Right, exactly. But it's something that, I've become passionate about because it works. It works for me. I never even thought about quitting smoking. Never even thought about it. And people say, oh, you got to want to quit and blah, blah, blah. And that's true. But everybody's different. I never thought about quitting smoking. I just tried vaping, and it was awesome. I loved it. And I still love it. And that's why I'm passionate about it, because it works. I know it. I know what's true about it. And so do millions of other people. We believe in it because it's truth. I mean, that's the thing.
It's a hands down. We know what works. And whether you've got a mod, a Juul, an open tank, it doesn't matter what the hell it is.
Whatever
this
works for
means somebody is not smoking.
Exactly. Exactly.
You being connected with people around the globe the way that you are, and doing the things that you do as a journalist now, do we see or do you see any of this same kind of behavior from governments or anything about vaping? I mean, United Kingdom or China or whatever. Are they taking the same kind of hardline stance that the FDA is doing?
I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, there's some countries that are just outright banning it.
Okay,
And,
now,
what's that?
let me ask you, can you tell me why they are banning it?
I, I mean, from my sociological imagination, and this is just a theory, I'm not even saying it's true, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was, given what we've figured out as a community, um, that they take their marching orders from a more powerful entity, which is um, our government, because we are, I mean, the most um, supreme government in the world. And so, I mean, look at all the countries that are now looking into legalizing marijuana. I mean, that didn't happen anywhere except for Uruguay, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but as soon as the U.S. and Colorado, where I live, as soon as Colorado, legalized recreational marijuana, and um, Washington State, I mean, look at all the states that are growing, that are starting to do that now. Look at all the countries that are looking into legalizing marijuana, because it all starts here in the U.S. So if these other tiny, smaller, governments around the world in these other countries are hearing from, um, I don't want to say they're employers, but people who have much more substantial power than they do, um, you know, saying, "Hey, shut down vaping." They're going to shut down vaping. I mean, they have no choice. You know,
That's a shame,
I
too.
mean, and maybe that that's a little conspiratorial, but at the same time, it's probably pretty true. I mean, when you step back and look at the world, I mean, let's be honest, that's probably what's going on. I mean, from a broad perspective.
You take a look at it from a very broad perspective, and you're right. It's
Right.
I see trends and everything. I was just curious from your capability to connect to different sources that other people probably don't have a
Well,
means or a
of course,
capability.
the UK is very more lax on these issues. Of course, I mean, the UK has embraced it, and it's kind of become, I feel like, the epicenter for vaping because of the way that their general public has even kind of embraced it as well. And I feel like that's awesome. That's fantastic. The UK is very much the epicenter, I think, of vaping, and it used to be California,
Wow.
but people are just butchering that in California. Clearly, I mean, we've seen the footage that's been put on about with all these hearings and stuff with the communities, and you see all the counties and stuff that are banning flavors in California, and the things that these people are saying are unbelievable. I feel like the Sacramento hearing was a good thing. There was a lot of support for that. A lot of industry professionals came out and spoke the truth and were honest. And then there was a lot of other special interests there, whether they worked for certain organizations, that are considered nonprofit or whatever. Regardless, they're just going up there lying about how vaping is terrible and it's ruining our communities, and it's going to addict our children to nicotine. And that's simply not true.
Yeah.
It's just not true. I mean, is there underage vaping? Absolutely. But I mean, look at that infographic that you posted earlier. I mean, there's a lot of other things we need to worry about more than just vaping. I mean, my God.
Yeah, and how they single out teen epidemic for vaping. It just
Yeah, right, exactly.
and when
And
people ask me about it, I tell them, I said, if you really want to see truth of, follow the money. You know,
exactly,
you
exactly. That's what it's all
they
about.
say, well, the Truth Initiative told me this, and it must be true because it's coming from the Truth Initiative. What a crock
Yeah,
of shit.
the Truth Initiative.
Yeah,
Yes.
truth this.
Well, right, exactly. Well, there's a quote that I use a lot in my articles because it's it's one of the greatest quotes I've probably ever heard, and that's 99 out of 100 questions, or 99 out of 100 questions, the answer is always the same: money, plain simple. So I mean, but I want to know what that other answer is. If 99 out of 100 questions, the answer is money, what's that other answer?
It
I don't
can
know.
be, it would be cumbersome, I'm sure. Hey, you mentioned
Yeah,
articles.
not
Out of all the articles that you have written,
yeah.
let me ask you a couple of things. What was your favorite article? What was it about? And who did you write it for, if you remember?
Okay. Well, one that really sticks out to me is where I did a lot of research and used a lot of uh, previous work that uh, I've done from graduate school. Because one of my professors in graduate school at DePaul University in Chicago was very much a harm reduction activist. He was a former heroin addict and stuff, so he would go around uh, the city of Chicago and try to help out the community of impoverished drug users. And so he ran like a needle exchange and stuff like that. And he also made documentary films, and he still does. So, from that experience in graduate school, I was very much intrigued by harm reduction. And basically, I realized that vaping was directly tied to harm reduction. So I wrote an article for Vapor magazine probably a couple years ago that was about how vaping can reduce more harms than just smoking.
Mm-hmm.
So even though vaping is very much used as a smoking cessation product, at the same time, I feel like vaping can very much help people who are addicted to some other illicit narcotics. Um, for example, opiate addicts or something. Just because if you look at every single, harm reduction website, or if you look at every single, research study that's been done on what people should do with their time when they're addicted to drugs and they're trying to quit and recover, they say you should do something with your hands to keep your hands busy. So vaping could do that, of course. You should find another social group. Of course, vaping can provide that. And there's a bunch of other stipulations as well. So I wrote an article that describes in detail how I think that it's just a theory of mine that vaping can very much be another form of harm reduction besides just for smokers.
Wow.
And then another article that sticks out is one that I wrote for Vape News Magazine. Well, a few, especially the one I wrote, a couple that I wrote on Fig Ramsey, of course, and his contributions to the community,
Mm-hmm.
and also James Jarvis, who are great guys and have been doing so much for the industry that a lot of people have given them praise, of course, and it's much deserved. But writing those articles was very enjoyable experience because I got to get to know them better as well. Um, and so there's a number of articles. I mean, earlier on, I'd say 2016, 2015, 2016, a lot of the articles I wrote, I tried to reach out to a lot of e-liquid manufacturers, no matter how big they were. If I saw some type of campaign they were launching that I liked, I would reach out to them and do an article on them immediately. There's another article that stands out about Bethesda Vapor Company in Bethesda, Maryland, which is right outside Washington, D.C. It's right near where my sister lives. So whenever I go out there to see my niece and nephew, I always visit Bethesda Vapor Company. And so I got to know those guys real well, and they're very professional. And interviewing them and writing an article about them was also an enjoyable experience. And there's a few others too. I mean, I've got plenty of props here. I mean, I think I've been published in every single one of these. But also I've just started recently over the past couple years or so. I started doing some writing on CBD magazine. This is a new magazine launched by Vape News magazine called CBD Magazine with Dave Gorlitz on the cover. Another great guy that I'm helping out with another documentary series that he's building.
Wow.
So, there's a lot going on right now, and
Let me ask you another
I feel
question.
like there's never an end of issues to write about.
Oh, it's a never-ending supply. What
Right.
was one of the most difficult articles that you had to write? And either because it was
Man,
a difficult kind of
I
topic.
know one that sticks out right away.
What's that?
There was one that I did on this legislation that was being proposed by Congressman Duncan Hunter. Is it Hunter Duncan? I always get it confused.
Yeah, Duncan Hunter. I remember.
Yeah, Hunter, who does some great things for veterans and stuff like that. And he was launching some vaping legislation. So I kind of read the whole legislation, and also spoke to a number of advocates who read it as well. And I quoted one of the advocates in one of my articles for Vaping Post, and I just said, here's what the advocate has to say about this legislation that's being proposed. And I was called out by Duncan Hunter's lobbyist on a Vaping Legion show, and they're like, I don't know who wrote this article, but this is just misinformation being spread, blah blah blah. And they quoted what the advocate had said, and it wasn't my words. I was quoting someone else,
Right.
and I got like a basically like a 3-page explanation in the mail about the information that I wrote that was wrong. And what's funny is they only read just one part of the article. The article wasn't bashing legislation at all. I actually wrote 2 parts of the article. The first part was to praise a politician for stepping up for the vaping community, which that very much was. And all it took was a simple email to them saying, look, have you read both of the articles? Read both of them and get the full picture. And that's another thing. That's why I think the vaping community has become so reactive, because the outside community has become so reactive towards us. We're so immediate to be reactive instead of proactive. And that's why I was telling them, I mean, that's the same situation. Take a step back for a minute, quit being reactive, take a step back and look at the whole picture. Okay? There's nothing wrong with what I wrote. It's not misinformation whatsoever. I'm just quoting someone, which the person who was being quoted was not spewing misinformation either.
Right.
I mean, there was some very strange things in that legislation, but at the same time, that was very difficult, just because it was like, I read the whole thing, get the full picture before you come at me like, I'm doing a disservice to society, because that's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to try to better the world and spread positivity and inform people of the truth, plain and simple. That's all I'm trying to do.
Do you catch a lot of flack or a lot of shit for some of the articles that you write?
Not usually. I'm kind of surprised too, because I've been pushing some buttons here and there just to see like if people will react. Because I mean, after that, because I want to get a dialogue going. I want to hear what people think. I mean, that's what we do in sociology courses. A lot of courses that I had. I mean, this is 8 years of my life. I was educated in sociology. So we'd sit in a circle and have an academic or intellectual discourse, about anything. And because everything is tied to sociology in one way or another, in my point of view.
Very, very true.
And, that's why I think vaping and sociology are almost kind of parallel to each other in a way. So, yeah, I don't get a lot of, shit for what I write. But I don't get a lot of praise either, I don't think. I mean, I've been writing in this industry since 2015. I've written thousands of articles, I mean, that have been published online, published in print, all over the world. And, some of them I read and I'm like, wow, damn, that actually made a lot of sense. I can't even believe I thought of that. And sometimes I read my articles and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Because sometimes it's just like, it can be repetitive with all the issues that are going on. It's just, I'm so tired of talking about fucking flavor bans and regulations. It's just ridiculous. But at the same time, if they weren't doing all that stuff, I wouldn't be able to make a living writing about it at the same time. So, I mean, it's like, it's still ridiculous. So I'd rather be able to live, drama free with my vaping lifestyle and write about something else. I'd much rather do that.
I don't blame you a bit. I tell you what, for just a minute, we're going to take a break for our sponsors. Because without the sponsors, Smoke Free Radio would not be able to do what it does, and there's no way in hell I could do what I do. So we're going to take a break for our sponsors, folks. We'll be right back.
Hey now, this is Dimitri with Smoke Free Radio reminding you to please show some love to our wonderful sponsors. Without them, there would be no Smoke Free Radio, and they are as follows. All the way from Florida, Moon Mountain Vapor, with locations in Florida, and their liquid available for wholesale and retail, moonmountainvapor.com. Some of the best custards and tobaccos on the market from the Brickwills Vaping Company. The lovely Shell with a vapor bar, locations in Texas, Virginia, and West Virginia. And of course online at thevaporbar.com. And who says you can't have award-winning e-liquid without cartoon characters? That's exactly what you're going to get at theplumeroom.com. And finally, of course, the Vaping Advocate magazine that has generously provided the telephone lines for you to communicate with us. Thank you for your support. And finally, for you, the listener, don't forget to check out the coupons and codes page on Smoke Free Radio. Pick up some e-liquid and save some money. From all of us here at Smoke Free Radio, thank you for your continued support.
Hey folks, P. Basardo here, and you're listening to Rewind with Mike Peterson.
Now I'm here this evening with Tony Ottomanelli, and Tony, coming up next, the thing that I want to really talk about is you are doing a documentary series that you have entitled Who Are The Vapers? And it's found on YouTube. Is there a particular channel that it is on YouTube?
Yeah, Who Are The Vapers film, on YouTube. So that's the, I'll go ahead and look up the direct link, but
yeah, I'll make sure that I throw it in with everything else. What is the series about? And where did you get the idea from?
Well, because people constantly ask me, like, who are the vapors? Like, what? They're like, well, I'm hearing all about this. I mean, the initial idea came in like 2016 for it, and I did a lot of filmmaking courses in graduate school for screenwriting and documentary filmmaking as well, especially ethnographic documentary filmmaking, which is another sociological term, which is basically just kind of looking at another culture more closely. So, I'm trying to approach it ethnographically. and just kind of discuss and provide for the people an explanation with who are the vapers by interviewing people from the vaping community, whether that's industry professionals, advocates, what have you. I was going to do just one long, big documentary, but it turned into a situation where I was like, I might as well just make this just like a little YouTube series or something, because the resources for what exactly I want to do aren't possible right now. I mean, which is making a documentary film is very taxing on a person.
I can imagine with editing, just even in running the things that I do, it's amazing. You know, I've run into so many roadblocks or technical issues on my end.
You know that in the editing process is kind of where the real filmmaking begins.
Yep.
You know, I mean, because you can manipulate it kind of any way you want, and but at the same time, I'm just trying to show truth from people who have quit smoking by vaping, and there's only one episode right now, but each month I'm going to do a new episode. I've got a lot of footage that I've edited already that I'm just going to throw together, and it's either going to feature like 3 people from the industry or 1 person from the industry, and it's always going to be less than 10 minutes long, because sometimes it's very hard for people to stay focused on watching something for more than even a couple minutes, it seems like. So I didn't want to make something that was going to be like an hour and a half long, unless if I'm going to make something that's an hour and a half long, I want it to be very provocative, and I just wasn't able to do that. But at the same time, there's the Journal for Video Ethnography at DePaul University, which is an academic journal, and that's where I went to graduate school. And my professor has kind of founded this academic journal, and I think it's important for us as a vaping community to share with the world visually, through the art of filmmaking, what exactly vaping is all about and who the vapers are, who is this community. And because clearly, like we've been discussing, when you try to explain these things to people who don't vape, they don't give a shit. They don't care. Or they might care at first, but then they're just like, eyes glaze over and that's it.
Yeah, it's not part of
a couple minutes maybe.
It's not part of their daily life. So the
it's very hard for them to
impact
connect with, and I understand that.
Yep. The impact that it might have on them is far different than it would be on you or I or a shop owner or a juice manufacturer, or a distributor.
But I think, that's another thing too, is with this series, I want some people from the general public to watch it. Whether that'll happen or not, I don't know. But at the same time, I just want people to have another reference to go to that, maybe we can get published in the Journal for Video Ethnography, where it's a published academic peer-reviewed journal with some academic research in there that's visual and visually stimulating for people, rather than just some 400-page document that's been a research study that no one wants to really read, and they just take little anecdotal information out of it. Video is the future. It's clearly what's kind of taking over right now. I mean, so I feel like we need to have some type of research published on the books for, when I say on the books, I mean like for, intellectual academics in academia or whatever. So that way professors and students can, access that information, and, we start, educating people at the root, which is the education system, because right now what we're seeing is a lot of people going into, elementary schools and high schools and stuff, scaring the shit out of parents for no reason. Just going in there telling them there's an epidemic about vaping that they really shouldn't worry about, only because, like I said before, the suicide rate for boys has increased 30%. Suicide rate for girls has increased 70%. And that's in the new book I wanted to tell you guys about, The Coddling of the American Mind. That's the name of the book.
Tell me the name of the book one more time.
The Coddling of the American Mind.
Who is it by?
It's by here. I'll finish with the title because you'll love it.
Okay.
How good intentions and bad ideas are setting up a generation for failure, and it's by NYU professors Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt, and that's where I got the information about the suicide rates.
Wow.
And that's very, very disturbing. So I mean, I feel like they're, I don't know what these groups, I don't know who these groups are that go into these schools and tell these parents, that there's an epidemic and they need to keep their children away from these dangerous things, which are actually considered harm reduction products. So there's not necessarily a known danger that we know of yet. I mean, of course, there needs to be long-term studies still, but what we know of now, there's really no danger. But the fact that the suicide rate has increased among teens 70% and for girls and 30% for boys, that's very, very concerning.
Yeah, that's where the focus should be, not on vaping.
Focus on that? Why don't you focus on the fact that alcohol consumption is much more of a problem? Why don't you focus on the fact, I mean, I know these are future customers for these big industries, but if we're going to act like we care about our children so much, then we need to seriously act like it and not just, put on this display of theater.
Not give it just a little bit of lip service.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned earlier about starting to write for a new magazine for basic CBD, correct?
Yeah.
Since you are who you are, where you are geographically, and you may choose not to answer this.
Okay.
Since Colorado has turned around and legalized recreational marijuana.
Oh, have they? Yes, they have.
Have you seen massive social change because of that?
Absolutely.
What kind of change have you noticed?
Well,
are kids acting differently? Are people acting differently? Is there more social unrest? Things like that.
I feel like people are a little more uneasy, a little more like looking in the corner of their eye type of thing, spying on people, a lot of intrusion into people's lives, very strange type of things, but also a lot of great business opportunities as well. And I don't know if those things go hand in hand or not, but human behavior is fascinating. And I almost feel like I'm in the center of a social experiment. I mean, to be honest, here in the Denver area, it's very obvious that the marijuana industry is extremely successful and full of a number of talented people, and it's still growing. There's new things coming out all the time, and it's exciting. But at the same time, I feel like it's also, from a broad perspective, okay, once again, because sociology is very broad. You look at things from kind of a step back and then reflect. It's also very distracting from what's important in life. What's the things we should be focusing on as a community. People are kind of, I think, getting things twisted around and being kind of presumptuous and a little too uneasy. Like I said, there's a lot of anxiety around, and people are very distracted, and they're not focusing on the big picture. They're choosing to focus on little things that don't.
Little pieces of things. Have you noticed, is there a rivalry between CBD products and recreational marijuana? Or do they seem to coexist in society together?
No, that's a good question, because it's a very hard question to answer, because at the same time, like, the whole CBD craze has been born out of the recreational marijuana industry. a lot of dispensary or CBD brand owners that I've talked to that used to work in the medical marijuana industry, you know, would tell me they would barely have any customers coming in asking about CBD when they were a medical marijuana establishment. Now that they're recreational, now that marijuana is recreational or whatever, all of a sudden the demand for CBD products has risen drastically, and for good reasons. CBD is extremely therapeutic, but at the same time, I ask myself, why wasn't this more of a thing when it was medical? But now it's more of a thing now that it's recreational.
Right.
So it's very hard to. I don't see necessarily like a competition, but at the same time, the whole CBD craze was born out of like the recreational marijuana industry, and then it was kind of adopted by a lot of these new CBD companies and stuff, which are essentially, some of them are extensions of, you know, e-liquid companies or vaping companies, which I think is great. I mean, because with these uncertain economic times, I mean, and with the regulations and everything about vaping nicotine-based substances, I feel like, you know, pivoting to CBD is a good business move. Obviously, you need to make sure you've got more than one revenue stream coming from somewhere else. I mean, if it's just coming from e-liquid, then you need to start thinking about, you know,
yeah, with all the crackdowns that are happening now, especially
just because, I mean, what is going on? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, are all e-liquids going? I mean, vaping's going to survive, but will e-liquid?
At what cost?
Survive?
At what cost is it going to survive? And the reason that I ask that is because here in Ohio, CBD has been outlawed. It's been taken off the shelf. And they're saying, you know, we're just now getting to a point where Ohio is going to have, I believe, because I don't partake of any of it. I believe that they're just getting ready to open up the medical dispensaries. That Ohio hasn't even hit a recreational point, you know. But there was some information that was sent around that's saying CBD is not allowed for sale in Ohio.
Right. Right.
And that just blew my mind.
Well, if you look at the timeline of when that happened, they did it a little bit after California did it. You know, I don't know what is going on in California, but I mean, I do know kind of what's going on, but it's very kind of almost disturbing to even think about. It's like, what are they doing? So, I mean, let's be honest, the state government's not getting their piece of the pie. Yeah. And until they sit down at the negotiating table and the government gets their kickback, then CBD will be available for purchase.
And that's what I try to tell people is say, look, I don't use CBD. I've spoken to one of the biggest, I would call him an advocate, David Gorelitz.
Oh, Dave? Yeah, okay.
And he tells me all the things, all the beneficial properties. I have spoken periodically with Michael Dunson here in Ohio, with Pinnacle CBD, and I understand all the actual health benefits that this product can bring people. You know, I've spoken to people firsthand that use it, and they're like, a little bit of this in the morning and a little bit in the evening, and I'm not taking the Oxycontin, I'm not taking the heavy drugs, I'm not taking the opioids, my arthritis doesn't hurt, I don't have migraines anymore, you know? Right. So again, I tell people, follow the money, because where is that taking money from? Big Pharma, big time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think the vaping community is well aware and has learned that Big Pharma's, you don't want to really mess with them.
Yeah.
I mean, people can sit there and say, fuck Big Pharma and all that shit, but it's like, well, don't fuck Big Pharma. I mean, because they're responsible for a lot of, type of, great medications that help a lot of people. I'd say billions of people. But at the same time, is Big Pharma possibly, interfering with the progression of CBD and vaping? Absolutely, of course they are.
When Scott Gottlieb,
why wouldn't they?
When Scott Gottlieb turned around and said that they want to come out with a new drug to help teenagers with their nicotine dependence with a drug from Big Pharma.
Well, I mean, yeah, and now if the if the mainstream media were to report on this instead of just talking about the Donald Trump soap opera always all the time, 24/7, literally 24/7 Donald Trump soap opera, it's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the news has become because that's what gets ratings. That's what brings in the money. Obviously,
Yep.
if they start talking about the strange things that the FDA is doing, where they're creating an issue that doesn't exist called the vaping epidemic, which is non-existent, and then working with Big Pharma to create a drug to stop this non-existent issue. It's very strange, but it's just very strange too how all these medications cause so many side effects and everything. It's just like, okay, well, this medication helps me with this physical ailment, but now I've got this other problem. So it's almost like, what the hell is going on here? But I feel like people have finally woken up and seen, well, some people actually a lot of people realize that, as consumers, that's what we are considered and that's what we are looked.
Yeah, they are marketing.
Right.
They're marketing.
Exactly.
My wife and I.
This is all about business. And I mean, from a business perspective, it is genius.
Yeah.
From an ethical perspective, it is, pretty shameful.
My wife and I constantly sit and we watch the new commercials that come out about this new medication. And we sit back and we'll count 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 15. And it's like, you can take this medication, but side effects include ruptured spleen or ill-gotten stomach, whatever, or nosebleeds or anal leakage, and I'm like, oh my God, yes,
exactly.
You can sleep better, but you're going to fart all night. And when you get up to go to the bathroom, you're going to leak. Really?
Right. Yeah. You're like, great, I don't have any anxiety, but now I've got explosive diarrhea.
See, and that brings me right around when people start talking about Big Pharma and vaping and any kind of an NRT, the nicotine replacement therapy, when Big Pharma came out with Chantix, and they did not bother to tell people the harmful side effect does include an increased possibility of suicide. I'm like, you have got to be joking.
Thoughts. People have killed other people on this narcotic. Let's be frank. It's not a medication. It's a narcotic. If it causes you to kill somebody, it is a narcotic.
Yeah, that's a brain-altering substance.
And if people, let's be honest too with the whole CBD situation. I mean, when you look at like the fact that it's been rescheduled as like a Schedule 4, Schedule 5 or something like that.
Yeah.
For approved pharmaceutical CBD. But the other CBD has to remain as a Schedule 1.
Yeah.
And it's almost like big pharma tells FDA, the FDA tells the DEA, and then that's what they do. And I mean, if that's how things work, that's how things work. And unless people, decide this system isn't working anymore, this is becoming very corrupted and very much about money and not curing people. This is very, if people decide these things as a community, and then maybe there could be some changes. But until that happens, there's not going to be any change whatsoever. This is the system we live in, and we have to either accept it or reject it, and that's up to the people. But,
and that's what I'm hearing. A lot of advocates are turning around, and they've been saying it all along, but now it has become a much more concentrated focal point that we must educate the public in order to change public opinion, because we're not going to be able to do it by banging our head against the FDA wall.
Well, I mean, the FDA answers to no one but the executive branch. So, I mean, they've got some pretty much unchecked power. And, it's very hard to try to fight that type of powerful entity. I mean, especially, that's why, I don't even like talking. I like to explain how the system works, but, I don't like talking terribly about, these organizations and industries because they are that powerful. I mean, they literally got a grasp on everyone's mind. You know, and if you don't think that they work hand in hand with the media, you're not paying attention. I mean, they absolutely do. I mean, that's what I was talking about earlier with these pillars of society, or the pillars of the economy. I mean, there's, you know, big media, there's big oil, there's big pharma. They're propping up our economic structure. And if they start to wobble because of vaping and CBD, there's going to be some pushback. And I don't think the vaping industry was ready for that. And there's still a lot of people making arguments, you know, when say, for example, advocates come out and say, look, you got to change your labels. You got to rebrand your labels. This is the only thing that, you know, the regulators are complaining about anymore. You got to be compliant, you know, get rid of the cartoons, get rid of the colors, you know, and some of the industry professionals in the vaping industry are like, no, that's not fair. Look at the alcohol industry. Look at their flavors. Look what they do. And they're absolutely right, the industry professionals, but the advocates are right as well. So it's almost like, look, we got to come to an agreement here. I mean, there is very much some irresponsible labeling going on, especially when it's, you know, what is it? Intellectual property theft. I mean, when there's like golden grams and stuff like that on a e-liquid bottle, it's like,
Yep.
come on, you got to be kidding me.
Sherwin Mena from North Carolina, and I know you know who he is. He said it so right when I had a chance to talk to him. He said the correct kind of terminology is irresponsible marketing. And it is. Anytime that you are having any kind of a label that is appealing to a certain demographic of underage people, or you are infringing upon somebody else's intellectual property, or anything like that, is so not correct that it's not even funny.
Right. It's a major problem. You know, and the fact that, you know, a lot of industry professionals just want to be like, well, this isn't fair. What about freedom of this and freedom of that? And it's just like,
freedom of that doesn't have anything to do with it.
Right, exactly.
Let me ask you this.
They've got I understand that they're feeling like somewhat defensive and attacked by advocates for suggesting they rebrand. But rebranding is one of the best marketing campaigns you can do. Rebranding your product. Anybody in business knows this. I mean, if you rebrand your product, you're going to see an uptick in sales. So why not just rebrand and get it right? Don't just take off one little thing that someone complained about. Make sure you're looking at it like an adult, you know, and, you know, getting rid of the cartoons and the colorful labels. We just can't have it anymore. I understand why industry professionals are offended. I absolutely do. I understand why they're being defensive, but we got to change that, because we can't have them use any more of that in, you know, these town hall meetings where they hold up the e-liquid bottles and go, see, look, your kid's going to use this because it looks like cereal. Yeah. It's just like, oh God, you know, and I mean,
from a sociology standpoint, do you think that we can still reverse public opinion, or do you think the damage has already been done and it's irreversible?
I don't think it's irreversible. I think it's absolutely a possibility. I mean, nothing. I mean, as long as the vaping community continues to, well, not continues to, but just comes together, unifies, which there's been a lot of unity over the years I've seen, where there's been a lot of little fights here and there, whether it's certain advocacy groups against each other that eventually come together, or whether it's industry professionals and advocates against each other and then come together. It's just, we got to continue to communicate. I mean, the minute we stop communicating is the minute we fail. I mean, and that goes along with anything in life.
It's true.
We've got to continue to communicate constantly. And, you know, we've got to continue to speak the truth and continue to share that with people. I mean, even if our family and friends that we talk to about vaping and their eyes glaze over, you know, do something different next time when you talk to them about vaping. I actually wrote an article about that too, that discusses, how to approach people who are non-vapers to discuss with them about vaping. But then I also wrote another article about how trying to educate non-vapers is very, very difficult.
Hey,
So
do you?
it's a difficult situation, man. It's very strange. It's very much truth and fiction, and it's like you just want to bang your head against the wall because you're like, what are you people talking about? This isn't a bad thing. This is a harm reduction product. It's a technology. It's a public health intervention. I mean, this is unbelievable what has happened. I didn't even want to quit smoking. I never even thought about it. And I haven't smoked for 4 years.
Wow.
I used to dip tobacco too. I have no desire to do that.
Do you have a repository anywhere of your, like an online repository of your articles, or somewhere someone can go to look?
Well, yeah, I've got a website, TonyOttomanelli.com, that has pretty much all of my work on there. I mean, there's a link that will take you to all my articles I've written about CBD, all my articles I've written about vaping, nicotine. A lot of things are advocacy based, of course, but other things are features on e-liquid manufacturers or hardware manufacturers, what have you. So, I mean, there's so many topics that I've pursued and so many articles that I've written that I'm almost, that's why I'm starting to do some other things like filmmaking with helping out David Gorlitz, and then also working with, finishing up my documentary series, Who Are The Vapers. And then also I'm launching CBDpodcast.com with one of my friends in Ohio. So, I got a lot of things going on. I also own the website cbdreviewers.com with my business partner in Ohio. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on. But at the same time, I'm going to continue to write articles, of course, because, writing is my passion. But filmmaking is also a passion of mine, whether it's a shitty looking film or whether it's a good looking film, I'm still passionate about it. I mean, I don't think Who Are The Vapers is extremely, the most professional documentary you're ever going to see or, considered worthy of academic research. But at the same time, it's a start, and, it's going to get the information out there that I want to communicate to people, which is explain to people who the vapers are. And that's that is, the vapers are your friends, your family, your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad. Vapers are people. They're everybody. They're just like anyone. They're just like your neighbor. So that's the whole point, kind of, that project.
When do you have part 2 coming out, roughly?
Probably. I want to probably put up 2 more episodes before the new year, at least. So, I mean, here we are. What is it? November 18th.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I'll probably get another episode up before December, and then another one before the new year. So yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Tony, I seriously appreciate you taking time to join me this evening. I really
absolutely.
do.
It's always good talking with you, Mike.
Oh, dude, we could sit for hours and discuss a ton of things. I know that. But it was one thing I wanted people to be aware of, and I'll transition right back to it again. Tony is doing the documentary series of Who Are The Vapers. Part 1 is already out on YouTube, and as you just mentioned, part 2 and 3 coming out before the end of the year. And I'm looking forward to watching them because there's a lot of very seriously good information in there.
Yeah, definitely. I've interviewed some very, very smart people in the industry and some very interesting industry professionals, passionate advocates, and it's all going to be under 10 minutes, of course, so I definitely encourage people to watch it,
Uh-oh. I think your sound might have dropped. Can you still hear me? Your sound has gone out the door.
Oh no.
Oh, there it is. There for a minute. I could see your mouth move and there wasn't any sound. I'm like, well, shit.
That happens from time to time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for having me on.
I seriously appreciate it. You know,
Yeah.
this is the whole reason why I wanted to do Rewind, because it's just on a fly that I can catch up with somebody, you know, spend an hour or so just talking with them. Because
Yeah.
there's so many people like yourself that I want to get in touch with, and I want to pick their brain because I want the rest of the world to be able to hear what you're saying. You know, even if you can't be live on a Thursday night, now they can. That's awesome.
Right, exactly. And I love what you're doing, and you've got the perfect voice. You should be a voiceover actor, or whatever they call them, narrator,
It's
like
just
the Morgan Freeman of the vaping community.
it is one of those things that I have a passion of doing, and thank God, Dimitri Agrafiotis, that runs the Smoke Free Radio Network.
Right.
You know Bill Tarling, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Bill Tarling had turned around and he said, "Yeah, Demetrius has offered people before, you know, Time Spot, and nobody ever took him up on it." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "If you're interested, you should get in touch with him." I did, and honest to God, 24 hours later, here's Demetrius taking his time to show me how to run the radio network material, and then from there on, it was like, oh my God, I found a new favorite toy or something.
That's what I love about the vaping community is people provide platforms for everyone and say, hey, you know, let's talk.
Yep.
Let's do this. And I feel like that's what's been so great about the experience of being in the vaping community and getting to meet everybody is, I mean, you know, just if you reach out, you know, people will reach back and you can chop it up and learn a lot, and also, you know, get to meet some new people and some new friends.
And all walks of life, too. I've met people in dinged out jeans, and I've met people in three-piece suits, and I'm like, holy shit. You know,
right?
just eye-opening, massively eye-opening.
Really, that's what I was saying. Who are the vapors? They're everyone.
That's what people need to find out. Folks, if you can, stop on YouTube, check out Tony and his Who Are The Vapers. And again, tell me your website.
Well, you can go to TonyOttomanelli.com. So that's my first and last name.com, Tony Ottomanelli. And then, just look up Who Are The Vapers film on YouTube. And also look for CBDpodcast.com coming soon. And, you know, there's a lot of things in the works. So, you know, just stay tuned, and I'll try to keep speaking the truth.
Fantastic. Tony, I seriously appreciate you taking time this night.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'll catch up with you again soon.
Okay, sounds good, Mike.
Folks, that's Tony Ottomanelli. I will catch up with everybody again in 2 weeks for another edition of Rewind. We'll have somebody else on.